Okay, let's see if this is actually live. Okay. Just making sure this is actually working. New to streaming here. Okay, so it looks like it is working. So I'm just going to be working on setting up a new ink journal of sorts, trying to figure out what I want to do. I have the ink stamps from the well-appointed desk, and I want to use those to make a journal. And if you're not familiar with these, let me grab another set here. Um, Anna from the Well Appointed Desk has these reusable silicone stamps, and they come in different packs and different sheets. And what you can do is peel them off and choose your own format. So this one is all pens and inks. So it's got, let me see if I can get that against the white in the background. So it's got, different ink bottle shapes or nib shapes, whether it's a sample, a pen name ink, and different characteristics. So you can kind of make your own reusable stamps. And once you've done, you can peel them off of the stamping block, put them back on here, and then set up a new format. So there's the pens and inks ones. There's like I don't remember what this one's actually called, but it's got like a raven on an ink bottle and some kind of like a witch's cauldron and a owl or a cat on the nib, and a crystal ball. And then the last one is coffee themed, because who doesn't love some good coffee stamps? So these can be used in a journal or on any kind of stamping, really. But I've thought they're neat. I've seen them from a distance for a long time, and I finally broke down and got them. So now is the time to kind of experiment. This is what I started with, a rough draft. I guess I need to hold it upside down here. So it's an ink bottle. It's a field that says pen, ink, and date. And then it's a little selector of sample, bottle, or cartridges. So you can mark which type of ink it is. So just for keeping track of what you have in your supply. And all you do on this is, once you have it on the back, it's backwards. Take a normal ink stamp, get it on there. And I'm just going to start by testing on the paper to make sure I have it. I get the stamping process down, and then what I plan to do is I'm actually using a Rhodia dot grid. I want to start trying to categorize my inks better by either brand or by color. Because right now, my current ink journals, everything is kind of haphazard. And I want a little bit more consistency in there. So here's how this works. I wanted to do the dot grid because then I can line it up. So I'm actually going to turn this sideways to get a better line. You can use the I don't know how well the camera picks it up, especially with this overhead, but let's see if I can add a little bit more light here. It's a side light, but that helps a little bit. So there's a grid on the block as well, so you can line your stamps up, and you can... Hey, Anne, nice to see that you're on here. So kind of line up, and then you just press down. And then now you have a nice output to use as a testing frame. I think at some point, because this is my current test cards, I have the col-o-ring cards, I've got the Butler cards, and that's a hot mess in trying to find a certain ink or a certain sample. So what my plan is, I think I might end up getting from either Anna directly from Well Appointed Desk. She's the creator of col-o-ring. Is the Rolodex style cards, which are not quite index size. You know, a lot of people who probably don't really know what a Rolodex size is anymore. That's dating myself, but you know, I came in on the tail end of the Rolodex era. Rolodex era, but that way you can have, you know, you can rotate it through. Let me pop this over real quick just to show what I'm talking about in case you're curious. On the Well Appointed Desk, you can go in and see all the different products and the color. Oh, I guess I got to click on the actual browser, not on my streaming page. This is looking in two places. There's all the different col-o-ring cards. So these, the col-o-ring rotary color decks, I guess is the proper name. So you can put it in a Rolodex, and it's got the little tabs on the bottom, so you can put it in and take it out. There's a good picture of it there of what it looks like. And then she also started doing this huge folio. Joe at the Gentleman's Stationer had one of these, and it's like a 12 by 16 inch massive ink testing thing. So that might be cool to do for different brands where you have brands like that or the color families. But you know, that's kind of the hope that I want to get to is something like that, because I just want a little bit more organization now that I'm adding more inks, and that, you know, my wife is also doing pins. She likes to experiment with a lot more inks than I do, so this will make it easier for her as well to look and see what the options are. But for this, you know, just in terms of right now, oh, that's just got ink all over my hand. This is why you do things live. Because I was thinking I could fit 3 of these across, and those are not going to be lined up because I didn't do it. That's why this is the test page, because also the ink on my finger. And then, you know, this is the long process of figuring out what orientation you want it in. But the stamps really well. I'm not certain how well that the clarity, because with the overhead camera showing, but it's a really clear stamp, assuming that you don't get ink on your finger and put it alongside there. You know, learn from my mistakes and have a better plan for that. Let me grab a towel here just to hopefully wipe some of that off so that I don't continue to put thumbprints on my test page. But I want to start using some of this. I think it was Anna who wrote on her blog that, you know, you want to use a lot more of what you already own instead of buying a lot of new stuff in 2025. And I kind of like that. You know, in the last part of 2024, we added a lot of pen and stationery things at the house. So I think it'd be nice to use more of what we already have. Yeah, Chris, I think, you know, I still know people who use a Rolodex, and I like that, you know, it's an easy way to look at inks. Joe has one at the Gentleman Stationer shop where you can just turn around and have dividers of, oh, these are the pilot inks. These are the, so you could sort it by color or by brand. And I'm thinking brand is almost a better way now, because, you know, there's certain performance characteristics of, you know, inks that you might want to use for a certain use case. I love the Iroshizuku stuff, especially with the new colors. Yeah, so these, I think this stamp layout is going to be good, and before I commit to doing however many pages will equate to this, I'm going to do just a couple of swatches on, let me close my ink pad up so it doesn't dry out. And in terms of ink pads, you can use any ink pad. This is not one from Anna. This is one that Beth found at a local, I think she got it at like Joann's or Michael's or something like that, when she was getting some other stuff for some gift wrapping. So what I'm going to do is I've got a couple of different inks. Some Roshizuku, some Mont Blanc, the Golden Lapis, which is not showing up in that well at all, which is it has the gold, you can see in the bottom there, all of the um, shimmer has shrunk down. This was the ink of the year from Pelican. And then I also have a Lamy Turquoise. And then because I was just filling up my other pen, the Coffee Break that I use in my Schaefer Coffee Edition. So what I'm going to use for doing this is Olive Octopus Ink, who's a local pen person and, you know, probably recognize the name if you're in the pen community or ink swatching. She found these and she had a whole bunch and she gave them out at one of the pen clubs. It's just a little glass testing rod. And these are neat because a cotton swab is not the best swatch. And that's another thing I've been looking at is, I assumed when I started cotton swab was the way that you swatch inks. Well, it doesn't give the best color. So what this does is you can dip it in ink and and then the other thing for writing these down that I'm going to be using is this is a cool little thing where if you want to have, now that we've been going to pen club meetings, it's a screw-on cap glass dip nib. So you can easily test inks. You're not having to dip in a pen because people have samples or other inks. This is also something I happened to learn about through the Well Appointed Desk blog. So this is really a Well Appointed Desk themed stream today. But let me start with the Mont Blanc here, because that's what I'll use to write down all of the ink information just on this test page. So dip in, pen, dip tester, ink, Mont Blanc Royal Blue, and it is a bottle. And then today is $20.25. Now, and then you can just, let me get this in view. Just put that in, swirl it around a little, and it's ready for another ink. Now, if you're doing vast color changes, it doesn't hurt to just run it over a paper towel, but you can see on the towel, it's not leaving any ink there. That's the wonderful part about glass dip. I'll have to look that up. And chamois suede cloths. When I used this before, since I only have the one ink pad, I wasn't as concerned. I think you can use just soapy water to clean these off, but since I'm only using black, and just in looking at how people use them, once you stamp like once or twice, even if it stains on there a little bit, the next time you get a new ink pad and switch colors, it's probably just going to pick up the new color fine. But I'll have to look up the chamois suede cloths. But so for the little glass dip knob, you just put it in there, and then you can just color it in on the ink bottle, which I think is pretty cool. And then for the glass dip, this is the other nice thing on that. Now, just touching it in the water, and it's ready for another ink as well. So that's the theme. Is glass is a great testing thing, and I've also seen like through Mike on ink dependence and some other things. Metal. If you have I think Mike uses like a bent letter opener, because you can dip it in, get a good swatch, and then the ink is going to instantly come off of the metal, so you can wipe it and be ready for the next test. So obviously this is going to take some getting used to, because this did drip through a little bit. So I think and this is a good learning experience, when I get to the point of doing an actual set of swatch books, I'll probably, because what I'm thinking of for the Rhodia for the time being is actually just, since these rip out, using the hole punch and making just a binder for now. Got some binders sitting around that, give them a second life to punch through, and then do this on top of a testing sheet, because you can see there how much just that little bit bled through. And I'll see what the other inks do, because that might just be, the Mont Blanc. It is a darker, and it's a, great performer. I really like my Mont Blanc inks. I've got a few special editions and a few of their core colors. They're all pretty good in general, but let's try an Oroshizuku. This is the Suigyoku, which is the teal, which I think I currently have in my Opus 88 Omar, which I think that might be the next pen in the rotation for journaling. Okay. And one other thing I saw, like when Lisa was showing us these, is you can use paper, and I'll do it later on in the stream, just on some of this blank spot, to show, some cool designs you can actually work out with the glass dip nibs, which is pretty cool as well. Okay, so let's... And if you've never written with a glass dip nib, it's a weird feeling. You get the tactile feel of writing with a metal nib, but it's just a dip in, so it's kind of like between the old school quill and a modern pen. And I'm always surprised at how much you can actually write with a single dip. The way it kind of holds the ink in its own sort of feed method. And, this is going to be the other learning thing with the glass nib and doing some sort of writing. Normally on all my other swatching, I've used a, I think it's a speed nib from an old dip set. And that's what I normally use. But I already like how, and this is where I don't know how well it comes through on camera, but the ink variation coming through on the, in the ink bottle there, really shows the color well. And that's what the difference that you'll see versus, let me see if I can find in here real quick the coloring card for this, to kind of show, because with these others having been with, here we go. I found that quicker than I thought I would. It shows a little bit more true to color on the bottle with the glass versus this, which was done with a cotton swab. Chris, just saw your comment, the Lamy Studio. It's a great ink, because I think, didn't you get that as a Christmas present, that pen and ink combo? It's always a good one, but you can see a little bit more depth of the ink through the glass testing rod in there. So that's neat to see. And also, Chris, if he's watching, say hello to Landon. I know he likes to watch the pen videos. Landon is our friend's younger son, who he got his Asvine P20 as a gift, and pen-abling a 6-year-old, because not how many 6-year-olds are using fountain pens? Probably very few, but I get text messages at time that, hey, Landon wants to watch Mr. Derek's pen videos, so that's, who knew? So that shows through, and then that also has a similar show through on the paper. So that's just going to be something with, if I use Rhodia, and it might be that I need to find a thicker paper, because this is, since I have these here, this is my Rhodia. It's the dot book that I've had for years. But this is what I've used, and it's just with cotton swab for different testing. And it shows that there was moisture on the other side of the paper, but none of these really come through. So it might just be, the thicker ink from the glass is going to, be the difference of shining through. And then the other testing that, I've had this. I got this from obviously Vanessa in like the Pen Show in 2016, and try a Roshizuku. It's a wonderful ink, and the bottles are some of the best looking ink bottles you're gonna come across. I mean, they all have that. They've got the little indentation in the bottom. They do sell it in some smaller, like 30 ml bottles, but I don't think I've really come across anybody who doesn't love a Roshizuku. I mean, the performance on them is also wonderful. So, this is original Tomoe River in cream, and I like having ink swatches on the cream as well to show how, it can look different on the different ones. Like that's a Colorverse Pulsar Pulse from the Inkvent calendar, and you can see that variation that comes through, that Tomoe shows inks different. Well, that's good, Anne. I'm glad. For a second there, I thought you didn't have any, and I was like, I know you're a pen person, so how could you not have any of the precious? So let's see how this one comes through with the shimmer. This is the Golden Lapis. Here, that was from the Pelican Hub this year. That if you attend a Pelican Hub, or if you never have, Pelican has an event each year, and the gift to all the attendees who sign up through their official channel, if you have a hub in your city or you travel to one, is a bottle of ink. So that's always a plus, and they do a new color each year. Oh yeah, that got a good so pen. And I say Pelican, it's Pelican Edelstein. It's one of their sub brands. So if you're not familiar with that, make sure that that's clear. Pelican Edelstein. And I'm already seeing that I'm going to have to look on this other stamp section and see what other fields, because I feel like this needs an ink brand, and then also room for the actual ink. So let's see what other. So I might go. Okay, so I think I might need to add on this line as well, which is the brand and color. So I'll actually do that here in a second, but let's see how this shows through or not. Oh yeah, that one full bleed through. Luckily only onto one page, but you can see the shimmer. I mean, actually on the camera view from looking up at the stream, it looks like that shimmer is showing through really well on there. But let me show then, because I want to, that's why I'm doing this test, to make sure I liked this format and everything before I get too far in. But in doing that writing so far, and just do this to, and this is what I was talking about with having to clean these. Yes, there's a little bit of ink on there, but once it dries on, you're not really leaving anything. But here's how you set these up. So you go onto your sheet, they just peel off. Feels kind of like a gummy bear consistency if you're familiar. So I'm going to have to rearrange this a little bit on the testing block. And on the block here, let me see if I can do this where it shows. You're just peeling them off. And they're silicone, so they stick. So I'm just going to move that up a little bit on there, and you just press it in. So I'll put that further up that way. And the grid is really important to have on here, because I think if I made a stamp and everything was crooked, I'd go a little bit crazy. Maybe not everybody, but that would drive me completely batty. Now, here I'm going to ask for opinion. Do you think it's better to put the brand and color stamp above the one that has pen, ink, and date, or below? I'm thinking it makes more sense to put this above so you have your brand and color, and then you get into the others. Um, any thoughts of why that might not be the right way to arrange them? Because I think that is the way I'm going to start with and see how it looks. Um, and then, you get it lined up. And I'll get that right on that line. And that is one thing with this silicone, though. It's silicone, so you have to kind of go slow with laying it down to be sure it settles in. So it's now. Let me see if I can show this when it went on there. The back part bent, so it's actually not in a perfect line. So it's the good thing. You can peel it off and reapply. And you can't, that's one thing I've learned in doing this the first time and doing this now. You can't really press down on it. You kind of have to set it like as if you're setting down a sticker that you're going to then use something like a card or something to get all the air bubbles out. You have to kind of get it set on where it sits straight. And this silicone has some natural stick to it, and that's what holds it on. Okay, much better. So if you can see, that's now, see if I can, well, that doesn't help. What do I have that's got some color that I can put behind it here? So you can see the grid. Now it's lined up. So let's do that with the next part here. Okay, flat side. And then this is the other part, you're working in, if you're like in this, I'm trying to line up 2 stamps so it looks like one. So make sure you start by getting your sides equal. And just as a side note, you can get larger stamp blocks if you have a need. And that is also not straight on there. So if this, I'm trying to work within the stamp block that I have, that I got when I got the other. But you can get larger stamp blocks. So if you're doing like a full sheet, or this is really common with journalers, these reusable stamps. So you could do a full layout of stamping. Okay, that looks better. So let's... The other thing I've found with just initial testing before doing this, the first time I played around with these, is since my stamp pad is not as big as, you can do it backwards, set the block down, and just kind of press down inkwise. Get a good firm press. That already looks much better. Now my OCD is kicking in a little bit because there's like a millimeter difference from that to that, but I think it'll be okay for now. I think I'm going to have to end up finding a thicker paper before I do this for real. So for this testing session, let's get another couple of those stamped. So Anne, I believe you said in the chat you have some of these. Chris, do y'all have any of these well-appointed stamps? I know y'all have a ton of inks as well, so that might be a good Landon project. Assign him the stamping duty to build out different sheets or cards for you to be able to stamp and swatch all your inks on. Get that on there. Yeah. And I also, just from an OCD standpoint, that is slightly skewed. So that's the That's really the hardest thing on these is getting them lined up. You have the grid, but I almost wish that there was, and I might have to look and see if I can find one that has smaller grid lines. Oh, sorry. Just realized I'm not holding that in camera. Smaller grid lines, I think, would be helpful to get those lined up. But, you know, overall, I think that having the brand and color, and you're not wrong. You know, you think, oh, I'm fine with a thing not being perfect until you see a stamp and you're like, oh, that's off by 2 millimeters. I must change this right now or I'm going to go crazy. And I could also see, like, for something like this, once I get this set up, I'll probably need to get another testing block anyway, just so that I'm not trying to recreate this whenever I have a new ink to stamp. So I'm going to definitely have to get a new thing. I'm going to mute real quick and take a drink. My throat's getting a little dry. Okay. And not related to this stream, it's not something I'm going to do today, but I think I found a way with my microphones to get a good ASMR type recording to hear feedback of nibs. I did some testing last night with my Platinum 3776, which is a really prominent sound, and had the little wireless mics that I got, the DJI mics, and you can just set it down on the paper and it'll pick up the pen writing. So I'm looking forward to playing around with that some. I think that'd be a neat aspect for a video, is hearing the sound feedback of nibs, because I love that. That's a big part of the pins for me. Okay, so let's see what we're dealing with. Let's do the Lamy Turquoise, which, if you've not used the Lamy Turquoise, it's another great ink. This is actually the Butler Stationery. We actually have 2 pen stores in the greater Nashville area, so we're kind of spoiled like that. And, one started online, the Gentleman Stationer, a long time ago, and that they just recently opened a shop. And then Butler Stationery started around COVID. He, I think, was a real estate agent and decided he wanted to open a pen store, so he switched as he was able to, and he actually is just opening up a new location. He just moved to a bigger building, so it'll be nice to do that grand opening. I'll probably try and go do a store walkthrough like I did with Gentleman Stationer. So let's see how this looks here. But what I was saying about the turquoise, it's a great ink. It behaves. So this is what he uses as his test ink in the store if he's dipping a nib, so someone can try something out. So brand Lamy Turquoise. So this is where I'm gonna have to figure out. So I've got the brand and the color, but then I've got pen, ink, and date. I almost feel like I need to cut that stamp and take out the ink and date field, because I guess there is a purpose in tracking the date. So if you're doing, if you want to know what year you got something, to see how long it takes to go through a bottle or something like that. But what do you, drop some comments in there. What do you think for thoughts? What would I put in that ink field if I'm already putting brand and color? I mean, I guess I could use, if it's a shimmer, a standard, or a sheen. So I could call this just standard. And then, like, if I was doing this one, I could add in shimmer for the Edelstein. And then I don't think any of these that I grabbed off the shelf are sheeners or extreme sheeners, but maybe that's a good use for that field, is and today's the 20th. And so I already like that format better. And it's weird on this, it's drying darker than it writes. Now that's something I see a lot. since all my nibs, everything looks darker with the extra fines. But, you know, and then if you don't own Lamy bottles, just in case, I think everybody, at least the people I know on the stream, they've got the cool little, nib wiping strips in the bottom that I hardly ever use them because I'm kind of curious. Like, I don't think they're refillable or anything, but it's a neat premise that if you can just rip some off there to wipe your nib off after you've filled up. But I already like that layout much better. I think having the, once I get the sample bottle thing straightened up a little bit, and this is also a little bit of the OCD-ness coming through. The ink, when using that glass, is going outside of the lines. So let me actually try. This one here is the Coffee Break, which another great brown ink. It's my true brown love is Mont Blanc Toffee Brown. That's in my 823, which I need to fill that up. And I'm actually going to have, I haven't announced this or mentioned it at all. I'm going to be doing a giveaway soon of an Asvine. And since you're on the stream, you get to see. It's the Amber Asvine V126. So I'm going to do a comparison video between this and the Custom 823, since this is a representation facsimile, very much so, of color, filling method, and look of the 823. But I thought that'd be a neat video, and then after I've done the video and the comparison, I already have a couple of V126s, so I'm going to give this one away. So I'm still trying to figure out all the right YouTube ways to make sure that I do the giveaway in the correct manner and I don't, violate anything and whatnot. But that is going to be forthcoming. So what I was going to try is actually just using the dip nib. And see if coloring it in, or I might just have to, look around and see what other implements I have that, because that's laying it on really thick. But let's give that a moment to see how it dries. That might be a better way for this type of stamp format to, fill it in that method versus using the glass dip. Because let me try side by side. Same ink. I'll just use one of these other pre-stamped, and I guess if I'm a little bit more careful, I can get it pretty close. I think it's just as the drops kind of settle, that's what was making it go out of the lines. So that's something else I'm going to have to play with. And once I figure out what paper, and, I think just from seeing this, I'm going to go in and order probably another smaller testing block. And I think Beth might have gotten a couple of the stamp blocks in a larger size. I want to leave this one, once I get it straightened out, as is for the format. I like it. And I'm actually going to see if that's already dry. So I'm going to try and fix this part here real quick. Now, and this is a question that I kind of go back and forth on. If you only have a sample of an ink, do you put it in your swatch book and do you consider that you own the ink? Or do you only really track bottles that you own? What are your thoughts on that? I know that some people, they track every single sample, and, if I would have done that early on in my pen career, I'd have books and books full, because I used to just get loads of samples like from Vanessa or something like that. So I'm going to set this aside and let it dry. And I'm actually If you're not familiar, let's see. Grab the keyboard here. Let me get to the browser page. And I think it's on my other browser. If you're not familiar with FP... if this is the URL, yeah, Fountain Pen Companion. It is a good online repository for tracking inks. Let me see. Do I have a setup where I can switch browser? I do. So let me transition to that. So this is the Fountain Pen Companion, and it lets you track your inks. So, man, I did that again. Let me see if I can fix this view a little bit. Okay, so that's fitting in the window. You can do pens and inks. Pens does not show publicly, but you can link people to your ink collection. So this is my digital ink repository. And the best thing is you can go search by brand and ink color. So I have not had to type any of these in at all. But this is where, because they have in their site where you can track bottles or samples. And the only sample I tested in here was Diamine Pumpkin. That's actually one that Butler Stationery gave. He was telling Beth, because this ties in with the Lamy Turquoise, that someone didn't realize one of the testers was full that was on the counter, and they dipped it into the Diamine Pumpkin, and it made this really cool color. So he gave us a little sample to play around with when Beth got that bottle. Now, I don't know who of you have watched How I Met Your Mother, but in there's a Halloween thing where Ted is trying to find the slutty pumpkin. So we actually were able to recreate the color that we have named the slutty pumpkin, which is a few drops of Diamine Pumpkin inside of Lamy Turquoise. We made it in a little vial, and that is now the ink called the Slutty Pumpkin, which is a nice teal. It's very similar to Birmingham Pen Company Ohio River, I think it was. But if you're not familiar with Fountain Pen Companion, it's FPC, or it's fountainpencompanion.com, or you can go to FPC, and I'll put it over here in the chat if I can figure out where that is. You can go to fpc.ink, and you can actually look up. You can also track on there a dashboard of like currently inked pens and things like that, but that's a little bit much to keep in track with. But it also sort brands, like how many of each brand. So I have 8 Mont Blancs, 10 Pilots, and I did not go in and put all of my Inkvent calendars in here. But this is the other part that I really like. The ink visualization of which inks, what color spectrum. Because that's one thing as we've been using more inks, seeing if there's a lapse on what colors that we have, if there's something that we want to get more of in a certain color family. Because I've been trying to branch out a little bit more and not use the same inks all the time. Now that's hard for some pens because and it's great because when we went to New York City and did the stationery store tour over Thanksgiving, we actually went to the bar that was the based is what McCracken's was based off of, or McLaren's was based off of from the show. So we went in there and all the drinks are How I Met Your Mother themed. And, they had so that was neat, and that tied in because we had done that ink right a couple of weeks before we went to New York. So that lined up. But so I think this really shows coloring in it even as it dried spread out some. So I'll probably have to do testing and see what's the best way to. Let me grab another ink here, and I think what I'm seeing is I'm going to have to use the glass dip nib if I use that for my testing method and just figure out what's the small amount to put in here so that when it spreads, it stays within the lines. I don't know if ink will settle, like some fluid, I'm not someone who's ever studied fluid dynamics, but it's neat when fluids stop at when they come in contact with another, ink or line or something like that. So that would be neat if you put it on there in a drop, and as it slowly spreads out, if it would stop at the stamp lines, but I don't think I'm going to be that lucky, unfortunately. But that might be the trick, is trying to figure out exactly, because I think I don't know if I could do it like that. So I might have to, let me actually, do I have any swabs? Let me do this real quick. Let's see. Transition. Let me grab a swab. Okay. So let me do a swab of the same ink and see if that will color it in where it stays in the lines. Now this is something here that you can obviously see. This is the same ink I just did here. The Pelikan 4001, a traditionally drier ink. Just touching the swab, and this is why I guess they say it's not good for ink color. Look how light that is there versus that. Night and day. It's almost, you'd be hard pressed to know that was the same ink if you just saw those two things side by side. So that's one thing with a swab, you have to let it soak in. And then even then, you really have to get it saturated to show, by the time that other one dries, that's going to be, you would not know. So I guess that really, answers that question of why you shouldn't use cotton swabs to swatch. So I'm going to have to play around with that when I get to the final iteration. But I think I'm glad I went through this, and, there's still some slight lineup issues. I'm going to have to figure out the best way to get those perfectly lined up. But, I think this will be a good way once I find a thicker paper, and I might even get something like a sketch pad paper, which will be a heavier weight. Now, just out of curiosity, so there's another video that I've filmed, but it hasn't gone live. But, that's the joy of the live stream, is you can play with sneak previews of things. So the video was Gentleman Stationer for Fountain Pen Day this year did a paper sampler pack, and it's making me curious how some of these papers will deal with stamping. So let's just do a stamp since I have them here. So there's 8 different papers that are in that forthcoming video. It's not scheduled yet. I'm still trying to figure out a thumbnail and whatnot, because it's, YouTube has been fun. I like the editing. I like coming up with the video ideas, but thumbnails are not the easiest part. But these are the papers in there: the Write Notepads, Dot Grid, Life Bank paper. But this, if you've never used this, the onion skin. I mean, it's like writing on tissue paper, and it was a unique experience. But it made me think, because there's one of these papers here that, and also French rolled paper, cameras, they fight it because it makes a more pattern when you're filming. And in the video, regardless, you fight the mixture of needing light and also needing to film, and that fought me. But there's a couple of these in here like this Life Bank paper, it's nice and thick. Or the Write Notepads dot grid. I'm actually going to try both of those, and for why not, I'll do a stamp on the onion skin, because these are just the test pages essentially. So put those back over here. Okay, so, and we'll just do the same stamp across all three, so that adds to the testing look. Have any of you on watching ever used the onion skin paper? It's trippy. I was gonna actually buy some more just from the curiosity. I have 2 more sheets of it, but Joe was saying it's sold out right now, and his distributors who sell that are actually based in Los Angeles. So with all the fires, he doesn't know when he'll be able to get some restock on some of those things, but so that's a thin paper, but that actually is a really clear, clean stamp. That went through great on there. So, I mean, that almost looks like it printed. If you get a chance, find some of the onion skin. And if nothing else, if I still have this, I know I'll see Chris probably around the Little Rock Pen Show. And Anne, if I don't know if you've ever been to any shows, but the Little Rock show is in March, and I know you're not all that far from your Texas area, assuming you're still down in the area I think you are in Texas, but you might consider Little Rock. It's a smaller kind of hole in the wall show, but Matthew Chin will be there doing nib grinds. You get to go to Vanessa's store, because normally Lisa does something in the store around the time, and Newton pins are there because Sean is the president of the Little Rock Pen Club. So it's a neat show. It was actually my first show, and I've only ever been to that one, and then Atlanta. But you might look at that one, Ann, if it lines up with your schedule, because at least me through real life, and Chris and his wife through online life for quite a few years now because of pins. So you get to put faces to names of some of those, kind of like going to a pin con. So I already like how this stamps on this bank paper. It might have to be let's see how when you put close that back up. I just know at some point I'm going to forget to close this ink tab back up though, and I'm going to put something down on it, and it's going to be permanently marked. Okay, so which of the inks on here was... So this is interesting. That Pelican still is like drops. It has not dried hardly at all. Like if I move the paper, you can see the drop moving across the surface. Yeah, and I think it's and I can't easily get to the calendar while on the stream, but I think it's, if you look up Arkansas Pen Show, I think it's like March 21st, the weekend around then. And Chris might know, but it's like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I think we are driving there Thursday night. We'll be there Friday and Saturday, and then driving back Sunday. But neat show. Gentleman Stationer is going to be there. Anna is normally there from Well Appointed Desk. So if you have pins you want to get ground, Beth's going to get her Pelican M600 tuned. It's got a slight catch in one of the strokes. This is where it doesn't happen for Marissa because she's a lefty, but for right-handed writers, it's got a slight catch. If you're writing, it's like it catches. So there's just a little burr on there, and because that is a true gold nib, I don't want to mess it up. So we're going to leave that to a professional. So of these inks, Which one should I try on these papers? I think it may be the Aroshizuku or the Lamy Turquoise. Any thoughts from the collective audience? This paper, every time I pick it up, it makes me think like when you're watching like a documentary or something where this is what people would have been writing on. Like I just did that Churchill pen video, and the facsimile pages of the notes in there where you see the show through from both sides. I think I use a Roshizuku more, but all of my inks would be tested on this. So I'll just do that one because I know that it's hard to go wrong with it. So let's do the full shoot and match here. Let's fill this out on all of these. Because ideally, in a perfect world, someone would come up with some sort of way to make a testing tablet that has a proper like grid of all the popular papers. I've seen some other YouTube videos where people are doing their ink testing and they're cutting little strips and putting it in a journal, and why I commend that and I think it's awesome to watch. That's just more. I don't think I can commit to that level of ink swatching, because there's one. I think she had like 7 or 8 different papers cut in strips down an A5 size sheet where it was individual little ones, and that's a lot. Okay, so here we go. And this is not on a tablet, this is just on this little leather testing mat. So I just realized I should probably be putting something underneath these. And let me actually do that so that my testing mat stays. Put the envelope that the paper swatches came in. And I'm glad I did that because it instantly bled through. So, okay. So back to testing. Okay. And it is in fact the 20th, not the 21st. Okay, so that shows through about as expected, but it's not bleeding through, it doesn't look like. So if I do the ASMR, I'm going to have to do this dip nib as well because it actually has a great sound that I doubt the microphone is picking up because this is a directional microphone, but when writing with this, it's got a great sound down in here as well. Okay. Okay. Get that wiped off the dip pen. And then the most important part of ink swatching is closing the bottle back before doing something else, so if you don't knock it all over creation. Okay, so in looking at these, on this onion skin, yay! More pen friends at the pen show. So this actually doesn't, it's interesting to see how much the ink stamp shows through on this onion skin paper. But that actually, the color wise, that's actually very surprising. Just this paper is so unique. And then this bank paper, let's see, let me set that up there. Bank paper in terms of it, now the swatch sample is still liquidy wet. It's soaking through. The writing doesn't show, the writing shows through about as much as the other from the paper testing, so I think for most writing this would be a one side of the sheet paper. But that's not bad. And then this was just a hot mess of how it bled around, which is interesting because this is actually the paper I have in the, I've been working on creating a commonplace book of sorts, using one of the right hardcovers. I'm so indecisive of what to put in it, but this bled all over creation. It bled through, it bled onto the envelope, which I'm glad I put down. So, I don't think the right notepads is swatching paper. The bank paper has potential for a single side use, but then this onion scan, it's just such a cool paper. I just don't know what I would do with it unless I was writing letters. Because even then, that it's an A5 size as well, so it's not like you would use it for notes. And I don't know. I'm gonna have to end up getting more of that at some point just to find reasons to use it because it's cool. So, I don't know. I'm gonna have to. I might just have to break down and get the large coloring sheets. Because I do know whenever I get to doing the testing for all of these, I'm going to do like I did initially and have 2 or 3 different papers all ready so that each bottle I'm taking down off the shelf and opening and swatching, I can do it in multiple places at once, because going back and doing it, it's a big time commitment to go through and swatch my fountain pen companion say I have, what was it, like 58 inks, and that's before the ink vent calendars. I've got it on the other screen here. 18 brands, 60 inks. So that's, I guess now with all the ink vent calendar, 120? Yeah. No, 100, about 106. And then I think there's also some others that we've purchased, like I got the col-o-ring, which I don't think I have in there, and some others. So that's the other thing of when you're doing these kind of ink tracking. Throw that back over. When doing these online ink tracking and you get new inks, you have to remember to update it everywhere. So it's not as much to swatch, because I lost track of a few inks that I needed to swatch when I was doing the ink vent calendars, but I didn't want to put the swatch in the middle of the calendar swatches. Yeah, tracing something on there, and I could definitely see that. It feels like tracing paper, which, it'd be interesting to know the history of the onion skin versus just a tracing paper. But it would definitely be for like a handwritten letter to somebody who, I know that there's the fountain pen pal things and some of that through Reddit or other sources. this would be the neat thing to write on there. You know, someone who's going to appreciate that you're writing, because even when doing my test, I was writing just on this little leather mat thing. Which, if you don't have one, these are like $7 on Amazon, and they were great for doing that. But I felt like I was gonna, when I was doing it for the video, you'll see when it comes out. But this is the only one I filmed the entire thing and put in the video, because this is the one I had a feeling if something was going to go wrong, it was going to be with this paper, and I was going to punch through it as I was writing or something like that. And I did rollerball at the top, so like these, the Oto rollerball, which if you don't have a good rollerball, Oto, look into those. It's the Japanese rollerball. Nice for doing lines. Some of the journals I have, you know, using a little ruler and doing lines down it. If you use a fountain pen, because it takes a second to dry, it leaves splotch lines. So I didn't like that. So good rollerball. But when I was writing on there, it kind of pressed in enough that, you know, you can actually feel it on the back of the onion skin paper where the rollerball is. I wish there was a way to, you can feel where the fountain pens don't press through, obviously, because they're, well, actually, there's a little bit of feeling on the back. But a rollerball, because it presses down in, you feel the indentation on the back of the paper from those lines of writing. So it's definitely different, but grab another drink here real quick. Okay, so get that back on. So, but this bank paper, it, aside from that little bit of bleed through, and I think that's just due to using that glass, you know, I think those are originally for like chemistry or for in a lab, like you'd use it. Because I think Olive Octopus said when she got it, she got like 100 pack. And she had tons of them. So that's why she was always giving them out at pen meetups, because what are you going to do with 100 glass things? Because as long as it doesn't break, you can use the same one over and over and over. So I think she gave me and Beth each 2 or 3 of them. So I leave them in my old Nocco pen case has become my pen club case that I always leave that and take it in there. I normally leave my little glass testing, my glass dip nib, which I got this just for pen clubs because you can easily test whatever someone has. And then the glass dip nib, I have my little loop that I leave in there. And, you know, that's one of those things that I thought I wouldn't use as much. And I've used it more than I ever would have guessed. You know, someone having a nib that you're wanting to look at what it is, or something out of alignment where the feed is slightly off center, you can easily see that and fix it. And the lighted loops, that if you don't have one, let's see, do I have mine? I bought a 2-pack off Amazon, and I think I had one that was like a desk. Yeah, here's one. Oh, that's sliding all around, but little pop out lighted loop where you can, yeah, actually that's showing decently on camera. Shining through. That is also something else that I got, that I'm excited to do some more video on. I got a macro lens. I shoot all my videos on my phone. This for the streaming uses just my basic webcam, but and then my overhead cam is my old Canon SLR. But I've been shooting all the videos on the phone, so I got a macro screw-on lens so I can film up close 4K of nibs. And let me actually see if I can. I'm still learning this streaming software. Let me see if I can make a scene real quick here that I can show that image of. I have a test image. And I don't know if you get the ASMR, but you get to hear the clicky keyboard as well, if that's. Add a source. Okay. Now, image. Okay, there we go. Browse. Oh, I gotta convert it, of course, because Apple takes its pictures in the funny format. So, go here real quick. Convert image to a JPEG. Okay, I thought I had that, but I guess I don't. So, give me a second. Let me get that sent to my. This is the thing with streaming, since it's still very new. Add to photos. Yeah, I am. Yes, Chris, I'm using OBS Studio, and it's great. And it's also frustrating because, at least on the Mac, every time I've used it, it has errored when it closes out. Even with a new update today, it still errors when it closes out. So there's a couple of little frustrations with it, but you deal with it. Okay, here we go. Let's see if this. So I want that over here. And maybe it's just me, but when. Okay, add that. Existing top. Okay, there we go. Okay, can you hear me now? Okay, I think audio is coming through, and that's another thing with OBS. When I made that new setting, you have to add your audio to each scene that you create. So I didn't add the audio over. So let me. Okay. So let me switch back over so like everything that I was saying you can actually hear now. So what I was saying on here is this makes me think of the Andre the Giant poster with Obey from back in the whenever that was. And you'd see that. That's my face in the background as I was just doing test footage of that. But that with that new lens, it's going to let me do 4K up close footage of the nibs and whatnot, and not have it be bouncing around like some of the earlier videos. So, I'm learning a lot on this stream of don't necessarily change your audio in the middle without planning. So at least some of these things will be in existence next time. Let me see if I can switch that back. That's keeping audio and add image. The other thing I wanted to show. No, it's not that. So I have to go there real quick. Go download. Convert. Okay. Let me come back over here now. What I'm wanting to show here is this other that is here. Okay, so that did not shrink down to any kind of semblance of small. Get this formatted. That's good enough. So let me move this over and hopefully the audio stays. Yeah, so that's the lens that screws on to the phone to give the macro. So I'm excited to play around with that. But get back to the main purpose of this and the ink swatching. So transition that back over and get the tablet back out. So I think I'm happy with how this is now set up. I think this is going to be the format I want to use once I get the alignment slightly better, because I can see it now on the camera. It really shows how those lines are not perfectly lined up. So I definitely need to get that tweaked a little, but I think I like that format. I'm definitely going to need, no, this is interesting because this Pelikan 4001, which is a traditionally drier ink, still has not dried on that paper. So I'm going to have to figure out which paper, because the bleed through obviously would not be ideal if I'm trying to keep it as a book. So if I go the notebook route, that would work. But I think with this stamp, this would fit on the col-o-ring card. So I think that might be going Rolodex, at least for one variation of this, to be able to, quick reference inks. And that would let me sort it by brand. I don't want to go to the level of doing 2 swatches of each to have one Rolodex sorted by brand and one by color, but who knows, maybe someday. But since I have my normal cards as well, I could do these. These are roughly sorted by color, which my first stream that I ever did was going through. I had, for that one video where I threw cards up in the air, then I realized I had to go put all these back in order. So I have it in a rough color family in this. So if I did it by brand in the Rolodex style, I think that would work. And I also need to go through, and once I get my list of inks fully flushed out, then I will be able to, kind of sort and be sure I haven't missed swatching any. So I think for now, I'm going to go on and wrap this up. I think I've found what I needed. I appreciate those of you who are watching along the way real time. This was kind of fun. I'm going to try to do more streams. I like the filming and editing, but it's also nice just to be able to go through and do some of this and get, group feedback on testing from other pen people. That's, very helpful for this type of project where I'm going to do this because um, everybody does their own ink swatching or testing. They have their own methods, and it's nice to learn what others are doing. And yeah, definitely, Anne, and I'm glad you learned about the pin show, and that'll be cool to get to see in March in Arkansas. So anybody else who's watching Little Rock Pin Show will be attending in March. So that's always a great show. They also one nice thing with Little Rock is there's still a good vintage pin community. So if you want to find your old Parker 51 or a guy in the pin club, he inherited a bag of vintage pins the other day, and it even had a duofold Big Red in it. So he's getting that restored. I think he's sending all those to Danny Fudge to get restored. He had a Vacuumatic in there. So it was like the barn find equivalent of a holy grail of finding the pins. So appreciate you watching. Be sure and make sure you're subscribed if you're not to follow along because I'm going to do more streams. And thanks for watching.